I will call to order the Monday, July 1st meeting of the Verona Plan Commission, and we will begin with the roll call, please.
Alderperson Yurs is excused. Commissioner Linder is excused. Commissioner Ritter.
Here.
Mayor Hokemer.
Here.
Commissioner Horsfall.
Here.
Commissioner Lytle.
Here.
Commissioner Heisen.
Here.
We do have a quorum. We will proceed with the meeting. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes from the June 3rd meeting of the Plan Commission. You have received the minutes with your packet. What is your pleasure?
Move for approval.
We have a motion by Ms. Ritter to approve the minutes, second by Mr. Horsfall. Were there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the previous meeting? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried, and the minutes are approved. Next, we have a public hearing on the General Development Plan and Zoning Map Amendment to allow for construction of a hotel located at 613 West Verona Avenue. I would accept the motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms. Ritter. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Heinzen. All in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And that motion carries. So we are in the public hearing stage. Before we have anyone else speak, if anyone desires to speak, I would ask if Mr. Sayre would provide the background, please.
Sure. The applicant is proposing to construct a 3-story, 91-unit hotel at 613 West Verona Avenue. Proposed hotel construction requires a planned unit development. Right now we are in the general development plan phase of the process, which is step 3 of 4. Along with the GDP, they're also proposing a rezoning of the property from RA to UC.
So we are in the public hearing stage. You've heard the background. If there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak this evening, or if the applicant has anything to add at this point, is there anyone that desires to speak on this issue? And if you would please, for the benefit of those, for us and for those watching at home, if you could just state your name and address and who you represent.
Will do. Well, my name is Justin Frame. I'm an assistant planner and a landscape architectural site designer with JSD. My address is 26 Granton Court, Madison, Wisconsin, 53719. On behalf of our development team, Nine Mountain Development Group, we appreciate the opportunity to review our materials and also an opportunity to address the commission this evening. I'll keep this short, as I know that we've had a lot of background on this site. We've been developing this site now for 4 years. We did present an initial submittal in 2008 to the commission. The economy and a number of other components forced us to go back to the drawing board. We've put together a plan for as Anna mentioned, 91 hotel unit development at this site that we feel will provide a lot of value to not only the West Verona Avenue corridor, but the general Verona area. There's a great opportunity for additional lodging, additional high-quality lodging. As you know, the site has a number of constraints that we've addressed on a number of avenues, from site topographical to more zoning variances that we've requested. However, they are few, and we feel that they impact the site to a degree that we're able to develop the site effectively and more efficiently. We feel that they do not impact the surrounding uses or the general West Corridor District. And on behalf of myself, we also have Dave Jenkins, owner of JSD, Lee Fischel, the General Development Manager for Nine Mountain Development Group, Ron Sigelkow of Dimension 4, our project architect, as well as Mike Schmelzer, who has done some of the land acquisition items that you see in the materials of the packet. An update on one of the major components of this plan being the land acquisition of the DOT property in the northeast quadrant of this site. We are currently in the reappraisal process of this kind of overall process, and we're working with Joe Farmer and Central DOT to reappraise this site. I got an update from Central Office on Friday that the appraisal should be back in 2 to 2.5 weeks. Generally, this process can take up to a couple of months, and we've elected to expedite the process in order to get a number back so that we can move forward from the initial memorandum of understanding with the DOT to create a contiguous Lot 1 site to move forward with the PIP. So we should have that back within a couple weeks based on the reappraisal. With that, I'm available to answer any questions regarding the materials in the submission packet. The ownership is here to address any site related items, ownership items, as well as Mike Schmelzer, who's worked closely on the land acquisition component of the process. Thank you.
Thank you. We are in the public hearing stage, but is there anyone from the council at this, or from the Planning Commission at this point that has questions or comments? Not at this point. So again, we are in the public hearing stage. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this issue? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this issue? Going for the third time. Anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this issue? Seeing no one, I would ask then for a motion to close the public hearing. We have a motion by Mr. Horsfall. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Lytle. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And the motion carries. So we have completed the public hearing stage. We are open for comments and discussion or potential action. On this agenda item, agenda items A and B would be a recommendation to the Common Council, and C is just for discussion purposes only. So with that, are there any questions, comments, or potential action? Ms. Ritter?
Is it appropriate to move forward without the zoning issue completed with DOT?
Mr. Sarah?
I think it is at this time. They have the issue to work out, obviously, with the city as well. Part of the component is in the northwest corner of the site that is currently controlled by the city, and I can put this on the screen. So the northwest corner in this area is currently controlled by the city, and they also have to work with us as well. So one of the things they're doing is they're proposing to swap this corner piece with additional city right-of-way that is necessary. We have not finalized that with the applicant obviously yet. Our intention was to do that at the PIP. Our intention was hopefully they would have the DOT land swap finalized at that time as well. This is still just the general development plan, so in essence this is granting them permission to put the building on the site. And we felt that precise detail of working out that land swap that could be accomplished at the PIP. In the packet there was a letter, an MOU from DOT signed by them. I took that as a good step, a good progress step with DOT. I've been contacted by DOT as well regarding the appraisal of the property, so I do know that it is moving forward, and I feel comfortable saying it can wait till the PIP step.
Further questions or comments? Mr. Lytle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There were a number of exemptions noted on the staff report, generally related to engineering, and I was just hoping to get any feedback from Mr. Gunlock in terms of whether any of these are of concern to him.
Mr. Gunlock?
As far as the setbacks, I'm not concerned with the setbacks. We still have stormwater. We haven't seen all the calcs for the stormwater, but as far as the setbacks, I don't have a problem with the setbacks. I don't have a problem with the parking either.
Further questions, Mr. Lytle? Any additional comments? I would just state that we've talked about this before. We know it's a very challenging parcel, but seeing the appearance of the building, seeing the parking that's available, seeing the access, the 3 different access points, working with a developer who we've worked with before, and we have confidence in. I would strongly encourage the Plan Commission to move this forward to the Common Council and look forward to continuing to work with the applicant on this process. So, I don't want to cut off any comments or questions, but any additional comments or questions? If not, any potential motion? Mr. Horsfeld?
At this time, I'd like to recommend approval to the, for the general development plan for the planning and development to allow the construction of a hotel located at 613 West Verona Avenue.
We have a motion by Mr. Horsfeld. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Ritter. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carried. Now we have discussion and possible action regarding zoning map amendment review for 613 West Verona Avenue to rezone the property from current rural agricultural zoning to the proposed urban commercial zoning district. Mr. Sarah, if you would provide the background, please.
Request is to rezone the property from RA to UC. The purpose of the rezoning request is to make the proposed hotel use consistent with the zoning district. Properties located to the east are already zoned UC. The properties to the north are zoned SC, suburban commercial. To the west is a site zoned RA, and also the west end development, which is a planned unit development. And to the south of the site is suburban industrial. In general, we feel that the proposed UC zoning district is consistent with the surrounding uses and fits with the other districts on Verona Avenue. And with that, staff recommends that the Plan Commission send forward a positive recommendation to the council for approval.
We are open for discussion or any potential motions on the zoning map amendment review. Questions or comments? Mr. Lytle?
I think I've asked this question before, but I'll go ahead and ask it again. In the event that they were unable to complete their development due to DOT approvals or other reasons, how does this affect their assessment going from rural agricultural to urban commercial from that point forward?
Mr. Sarah?
I don't know. Bill, you want to handle it?
Mr. Burns?
I don't have an exact answer, although I believe that the assessor would look at the use of the property. Zoning may be one factor that's taken into consideration, but I think the use is going to be the primary factor, and if it's an undeveloped piece, I don't anticipate that that would have a significant impact on the assessment.
Further questions or comments? Potential action? Mr. Horsfall?
This time, I'd like to move to recommend to the council that the zoning map amendment review, or at 613 West Verona Avenue, to rezone the property from a current rural agricultural to proposed urban commercial. Make that recommendation to the council.
We have a motion by Mr. Horsfall. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Heinzen. We are now open for discussion on that motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Mr. Horsfall?
It's just an overlay, right? So it's, the underlay is the urban commercial, but then it's a or general development plan, whatever is the.
The underlying zoning would be UC, the overlay would be the PD, the planned development.
Further comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion is to recommend approval of the zoning map amendment at 613 West Verona Avenue. As discussed, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Next, we have agenda items 4C, which is discussion only on certified survey map to create one lot located at 613 West Verona Avenue. Mr. Sarah, please.
The proposed CSM would create one new lot after the land swaps occur with DOT and with the city. So what they've done is put together a conceptual CSM just showing how the actual lot would lay out once the land transfers go through with those two entities. So that's why it's only a discussion tonight, because it hasn't been finalized. And their intention is once that agreement with DOT and the city is finalized, it would come back for approval along with the PIP.
Are there any questions for Mr. Sayre? Mr. Horsfall?
Sorry, Jamie.
Okay.
What would be the timeline? Do you think that would be ready for August?
I don't think it's going to be ready for August, because if the appraisal's still out 2 to 3 weeks, the issue is that we'd be publishing a public hearing notice for an action item that isn't technically ready. The second issue too is with the GDP, this actually goes to the council next Monday. So, and the cutoff for, I believe, next August plan commission is probably end of this week. So it's probably not feasible from a timeline standpoint to get them all lined up. And the applicant knows that it's a tight time schedule. It's just challenging with all the complexities behind it.
I guess with that said, does that cause heartburn for the developer at all, or can you wait a month to?
I think it's our intention to submit it as soon as possible, as practical. We are awaiting response from the DOT, and that's going to be a driving factor in how and when we move forward. As I mentioned, that I think the soonest that can come back would be 2 weeks, so that puts us at mid-July to the third week of July prior to having that issue kind of ironed out.
So correct me if it goes to September for the PIP, and then after the PIP comes another, after they get the PIP, then can they start work? Or is it, there's one more after that, isn't there?
No, the PIP is the last step.
Okay.
PIP is step 4. So they would come back hopefully in, I would imagine September with the PIP and also with the CSM. And both those items will go to council for approval the following week after the plan commission meeting for the final approval.
Ms. Ritter?
Is there any reason why we couldn't approve it pending the approval from DOT to move it along quickly?
Mr. Sayre?
You could. It's just still not going to resolve the issue that technically the PIP is not approved yet. So the PIP is is the final step in the process. That's what I don't want to say is hanging it up, but that's what's kind of slowing it down, is that there's still one more step in the process to get the full approvals.
But can we do the approval and the PIP in tandem at the next meeting
With the
if it's
CSM,
ready?
with the CSM, yes.
Okay.
That's what I would recommend, and I think that's their intention as well.
Okay.
And we would not be able to take any action on this item this evening anyhow, because it's discussion only. But I think your question, if I'm hearing what you're saying, is could we do that in August if we had the information?
Correct.
Mr. Sayre?
Yes, you could.
Okay.
Further questions or comments on this motion? Seeing none, before we move on to agenda item number 5, the 2 items that we took action on will be on the council agenda, Mr. Fischel, for next week, Monday. Okay. Next, we have discussion only. This is an update from Epic Systems Corporation on the design and construction of a landscaping berm. Mr. Dickman, are you speaking this evening, or did you want to do some background? Adam, if you would, please.
Sure. Epic is just back tonight to give a brief update on the landscaping berm that they're in the process of designing and will be installing in the near future. In the site plan that was in your packets, it's tough to read on the screen, but each lot here, what they've done is they've provided an elevation on each lot showing what the elevation is. And they've also shown elevations throughout the actual landscaping berm. So for example, in here, the elevation is 1041. The next one over is 1050. And then one more is 1043. And their intent is to construct the berm and install landscaping on top of it as well to fully screen those properties from the campus itself. They are still in the process of designing this, so this is still conceptual. And also on here, Campus 5, the proposed area, that's very conceptual. That's just a box that you've kind of seen in the past, and that will be subject to change if and when a Campus 5 were to come forward. So the intent of having this on there is just give a brief update to the Plan Commission to kind of show what type of berming is going to be out there. Epic is working with the surrounding property owners as well, kind of trying to tailor their needs to what people want to see on the berm as well. But this will be, I believe installation will be starting in the near future on this.
Thank you, Adam. Mr. Dickman?
Good evening. As Adam said, that we have the conceptual design. You've seen the conceptual design, which is very consistent with what we've shown in previous meetings and neighborhood plans and so forth. As I stated at previous meetings, building the berm is really going to be an iterative process, working with the neighbors, working with the city to make sure that we make the appropriate adjustments in height and contour and so forth so that it works and meets the requirements of the neighborhood and the residents. And we'll do the same, exactly the same as we're installing the landscaping, the types of trees, the types of shrubbery, the positioning of those to make sure that it works with them. Our intent is to get the berm and related bike paths and walking paths seeded, built, seeded, and landscaped, as well as the connection from the neighborhood to the Nine Mounds Road, built prior to UGM this September, and prior to start of any construction of the realigned Northern Lights. This is what we committed to. We're following that plan. You'll see some activity on the site right now. We're getting ready to. We're actually going to put a game fence to protect the neighborhood from the construction work, so people don't just go wandering into that. But we're doing that prep work now. We'll be starting to work on the berm very, very soon now. And as I said, it's an iterative process, and we'll be working very closely with the neighbors and the city as that goes on to make sure that it meets the needs. We'll be presenting more detailed plans for Northern Lights to you and the city for your review and consideration in the very near future. We're working on that planning and working closely with the city on a continual basis to make sure that works. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Any questions or comments? Excuse me, any questions or comments? Mr. Lytle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm curious as to the pros and cons that you weighed of routing the bike path closer to the neighbors versus routing it closer to the future road.
Mr. Dickman?
It's my understanding that the neighbors had expressed the desire to have it closer to the neighbors than to the road. From our perspective, we don't care. In fact, one design had one section closer to the neighbors and another closer to the road. But I think it is important that there are logical connections for the bike path and walking path into the neighborhood. And again, that's one of these iterative things. If the neighborhood says they'd prefer to see more of it closer to the road, we'll do that.
Mr. Horsfall?
Mr. Dickman, what was the top elevation that Adam said on the?
I don't know. I looked at the elevations. I was having a hard time. Maybe Nathan
These are 10 foot?
can help me out since he's the guy with the elevations.
Yeah, I think one of the peaks was 1050. And the existing grade may have been 1025 or 1030 in that area.
But again, if is that too high, it won't go that high. I mean, that's why, Nathan can draw it, and he's very good at drawing the elevations. But I think you really have to see it in the field, looking at it from the neighborhood, looking towards it, and then imagining vegetation on top of it. And that's where it becomes the iterative process. It's not something that our very good civil engineers can draw up, and you just build it that way.
And the scale's hard. I mean, it's 200 feet wide, so.
Mr. Horsfall?
I guess the question is, when you met with the neighbors, what was the goal of the berm? Was it to block out all of Epic, or was it to provide some kind of gentle barrier that? Because then what I'm getting at is when you look at proposed Campus 5 area, is that building's going to be such size that they can still see it over the berm? You know what I'm getting at? And I don't know.
Actually, the Campus 5 location is a lot of it's downgrade, so you're sitting on the hill. And I don't think it's going to be, and again, this is something I have to work with the neighbors specifically on. I don't think we want, if I were the neighbor, I wouldn't want to be looking into a green wall.
You're right.
I'd certainly want to be able to see the horizon. I like to be able to see the distance. And so I think it's one of these, as you're building it, how high is high enough? And then again, you have to imagine it with the vegetation on. So you don't lose the horizon, you don't lose the sky. And I don't think the idea was to block the entire campus. But on the same token, it wanted to shield it so that, you know, I think the worst example would be looking at Campus 2 from Northern Lights, where the buildings are right on you. And as some of you who've driven Northern Lights recently have noticed, the amount of plantings we've been putting along the southern part of Northern Lights. Again, we've been working with the neighbors on that to try to come up with a planting plan along there that, again, works for the neighbors and works for our site as well.
Further questions or comments? Not seeing any. Steve, thank you to you and to Epic for always being willing to provide updates. And once again, you demonstrate how you're willing to work with the city and with the residents of the city, so we appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have discussion on a planned development concept plan for a proposed mixed-use development located at 142 Paoli Street. Mr. Sarah, if you would, please.
Thank you. The applicant is proposing to construct a mixed-use building that would contain 24 apartment units and 5,000 square feet of restaurant space at 142 Paoli Street. The building itself, they're proposing, is an L-shaped building. The restaurant portion would be located in the, let's say, call it the, I guess, southwest corner of the site, and the rest of the area on the second and third floor would be apartment units. This requires a planned unit development because there are certain exemptions that are required. The step we're at now is the conceptual review of this. This is where the Plan Commission has the opportunity to engage the applicants in informal discussion. There won't be any action tonight. It's just the opportunity to provide them feedback prior to them, putting a lot of work into the site itself. This also goes to the Common Council as well for the same type of discussion. From a bulk standpoint, the building is approximately 11 feet off the north property line. It would meet the setback off South Nine Mound and obviously off of Paoli as well. One thing we did look at was parking on the site. It becomes more challenging with both a restaurant and with 24 apartment units. Right now they have 90 parking spots. 43 of those would be underground and 47 would be on the surface. By code, 118 parking spaces are required. Now, as part of the plan development process, they can request exemptions from the parking, which they have. In the past, the city has approved parking exemptions at other apartment projects that would require only 2 parking spaces per unit. If we would go that route, they would be still short 16 parking spaces. So because of that, staff has actually asked them to shift the stormwater pond further to the I guess, southeast there, and possibly construct additional parking in that area. The applicant has agreed to look into that. It would require a landscaping service ratio exemption if that was the case. So that's something for the Plan Commission to consider tonight with parking. From a drainage and stormwater standpoint, they are showing on-site retention. Detailed plans have not been prepared or finalized, but they are in the process of looking into those. The site itself has been identified as a possible brownfield site by the applicant. There are numerous vehicles that are submerged or partially buried on the property, and the applicant has concerns that there could be some contamination on the site. So there will be future testing if the project moves forward to determine the severity of the contamination and how best that can be cleaned up. From a architectural standpoint, looking from the bike trail, the building appears to be a 4-story building. The bottom level is the underground parking area, and above that would be, in this area would be the restaurant, and the backside on the first floor then be the apartments, and the second and third floor would be apartment units. The materials the applicant has identified include stone veneer, insulated concrete panels, and shiplap siding. The roof itself is flat. Staff initially questioned why not doing a pitched roof because it matches the neighborhood a little better, and the applicant made a good point. He said, well, we can do that, but the issue is the building will get too tall. So it's the trade-off of possibly looking at a smaller building with the flat roof instead of the pitched roof on it. And once again, looking from Paoli in the intersection of Nine Mound in the front, you have the parking, and then obviously the residential units in back. Internally, the site lays out with the restaurant component in this area. They have a large outdoor patio seating area, and then you have the underground parking underneath the patio seating. The architect is using what's a type of architectural style that would use only a single corridor access. And what that means is you have to go to the second floor to actually access your unit. Each unit, or most of the units, have two floors of living space to it. And the best way of showing this is probably the exhibit here. This is on the left side is the second floor, and a person who would be renting one of the units would enter here in the first floor, either the stairs in this area or the elevator, and they would go, they go up to the second floor, and there'd be one main corridor in that area. And once they entered their unit on either side of the corridor, there'd be stairs in the unit, and they'd either go up or they'd either go down. So in looking at the example above here, you have the center hallway here, and the unit off to the left here, you'd have living space on the second floor, and there'd be stairs to go down to the first floor, and the entire first floor would be their unit, and vice versa for the next other unit. You'd have a small living area on the second floor, and you'd have stairs going up to the third floor. So all the units except 6, so 18 units, would have that type of access, and that allows for cross air ventilation, lots of air movements, and it's a unique type of design. It's very common in Europe. It's been used in British Columbia, and I've worked on one other project like this in the past. So it's becoming more common in the States, but it is more common in Europe itself. There would be 6, I guess, traditional, we'll call it, apartments at the end above the restaurant, and then obviously above that as well, and that would just be a single floor. So as I said initially, as part of this plan development process, the applicant has identified exemptions from the zoning ordinance. The first one is density. The applicant's requesting 14.7 dwelling units per acre. By ordinance, if the property were to be rezoned to urban residential, they're allowed 12 dwelling units per acre. So they're requesting that exemption. They're requesting setback exemptions from the rear from Military Ridge Trail, and also a paved setback for the parking lot along 9 Mound. Parking is another exemption, which I think we've covered already as an exemption, and also a roof pitch exemption they're requesting. The city's comprehensive plan does identify infill developments, and new development and redevelopment in the downtown area is something that it does encourage. While this site may not be directly within the downtown area, it is in close proximity to it, and it does create some possible unique opportunities, especially along the bike trail. Staff is receptive to this idea. We find it an intriguing proposal. Right now, the site is zoned UI, urban industrial. I don't know if that's the best use in that area either. It is still as challenging because of the residential neighborhood there as well. But this idea is unique. Obviously, the restaurant component is a big piece of it. That's what kind of sets us apart from other, I would say, traditional apartment proposals, is that they would have that almost tourism destination that could be attractive people using the trail and also visitors from out of state. One thing I did not put in the report was talking about our residential phasing policy for apartments. The reason I didn't put that in was we haven't approved any apartments this year. So right now we're still at 0 for the number of apartments we've approved. Within that report, though, or in that policy, we do have certain exemptions. We do give exemptions from that cap, I would say, for downtown developments. Like I said, this isn't a downtown development, but it's close to the downtown. And we also give exemptions for mixed-use projects, and this is definitely a mixed-use project. So with that, I encourage the Plan Commission to engage the applicants. They are here tonight. They're happy to answer any questions you may have and provide them as much feedback as you can.
Thank you, Mr. Sarah. And again, if you would identify yourself for our benefit and also for those watching at home.
Sure. My name is Kyle Dumbleton. I'm representing the development team as part of that, and also the architect on the project. The development is 3D Development LLC, and I also represent Midwest Modern LLC, Architecture and Construction. And the address is 510 West Edgewater Street, Portage, Wisconsin, 53901.
Thank you.
And thank you for reviewing our project.
Was there anything that you wanted to add from what Mr. Sayre mentioned so far?
Sure.
Okay.
We think we've got a pretty unique idea here. We're very excited about it. It's a wonderful neighborhood that we'd like to be a part of, and we've engaged the direct neighbors a few times and had some good turnouts, some good feedback, and we recently met with them last week, and we also had Alder Doyle there and Alder Steiner, and got some wonderful feedback from our initial proposal. We had scaled back some things, cut down the amount of commercial, and in moving the property closer to the bike trail to take advantage of what we think is a great asset to the property. You know, we got some wonderful feedback on that. We really envision that this is an active type project. People that want to live on the bike trail, be able to walk downtown, take advantage of, you know, the great downtown that exists. A pretty urban type project, but also nestled within a more natural setting than you might get in a larger community, and try to preserve some of the larger trees on the property as much as possible, and also nestle within the bike trail. So we think it's a great fit for a mixed-use project typology, and you know, it's often asked, why not do condominiums? We think that condominiums have become a little bit difficult to move, and you know, there's some negative aspects of those with fees and things like that. So the rental typology, yet they are somewhat larger, trying to appeal, you know, for a good option and flexibility for the tenant. So with that being said,
There are
Any
questions
questions?
or comments from the Plan Commission? Mr. Heinzen?
Sure. I'd begin by just saying that this project looks like it'd be an asset to the community. It looks very intriguing. I use the bike trail quite a bit, and having, and I know the spot pretty well too. So it looks very nice. And I don't know if there's a question for you or for Adam, but the setback from the bicycle trail, and I'm just taking a look at the map that you have on the screen right now, is the area between what's identified as a bicycle trail and then that building. Is that property that is currently owned by the city? Is it an easement of some sort?
Mr. Sayre?
I believe it's DOT land. That's my understanding, unless Kyle wants.
that's our
Yeah.
belief as well.
Yeah, I believe it's DOT.
And I guess my question is, with regard to the setback, is the exemption from the setback from the property that's owned by the DOT or from the bicycle trail itself? Because it looks like there's a fair amount of distance between the trail itself and the building.
Mr. Sayre?
It'd be the DOT land.
Okay.
Mr. Gunlock?
Yeah, I think the state trail is actually DNR land.
Okay.
It was DOT land, but I think there was a transfer because it is a state trail, and I believe it is owned by the DNR.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Mr. Hanson?
I was going to say, so to the extent that there would need to be an exemption from the setback, that has very little consequence, honestly, then with respect to the bike trail, is that right?
Mr. Sayre?
I would agree with that, yes.
And I guess a question for you, you've talked to the neighbors, and has it been uniformly positive? Are there concerns that the neighbors have raised at all that you could share with us?
I would say the one neighbor that's probably voiced the most concern is Roger Roethlisberger. I think he's at 138 Paoli, and I think he's had some concern that it would change from, you know, almost anything other than a residential, single-family type home. And we've tried to work with Mr. Roethlisberger on a couple of occasions, and I think his current stance is that he would still probably rather see nothing happen, but that we've made some good steps to try to make it fit in better with him, and particularly the views out of his backyard and his kitchen window, which I think his kitchen window's on the more west facing of the project, and so we've tried to identify that by crafting the views so that they would be more natural, you know, screen the parking, screen the building as much as possible. And, you know, essentially we had originally had a building on the, I guess, more the very southerly corner of South Nine Mound and Paoli, and since we've shifted everything to the north more, I think we've tried to accommodate them as well as possible.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Ms. Ritter?
Do you currently have a user in mind or that's interested in the restaurant portion of your development?
We've been talking with several possible tenants, and we'll be, I guess, ramping up those discussions quite a bit, assuming we get some good feedback from tonight that it's a good indication that the project will be a good fit for the site.
But there's been interest.
Yes.
Just a follow-up on that, because I think the restaurant there is, you know, we've heard before about, a couple times now already tonight, about this being intriguing, and I like that word, intriguing, for this project. I think the restaurant is of interest, and in the staff report, or actually maybe a report from you, I see that the restaurant, they're looking at serving 3 meals a day. Can you talk just a little bit about what your thoughts are on the restaurant?
Sure, and this might address some concerns that we had initially from the neighborhood as well, as to what type of establishment might be going in there. We're going to, you know, the tenants we're talking with are more geared for perhaps the active or the family community. People that will use the bike trail might want to stop and get an ice cream, a coffee, a meal geared for an active type person, maybe a beer or two, but not the type of establishment that would be open late hours with live music, those types of things. So,
Other questions, other comments? Mr. Horsfall?
Yeah, is the on-street parking that's shown on this figure, is that current on-street parking? Or is that proposed, or what is that exactly?
The right-of-way there is a bit wider than some of the streets, and we would like to discuss with staff the possibility of perhaps making them permanently striped so that it's quite wide, so it's reasonable to think that cars will try to park there, and we would maybe bring up the idea that it could be good to help direct people where to park, given the width of the street.
Because right now, it's just open parking, right? It's just, there's no.
Just open. Yeah.
Mr. Gunlock?
Right now, it's just open parking. I would try to discourage parking on what I'll say the west side of the street, because this is basically a truck route
Right.
into the industrial park, and it has a lot of truck traffic. A lot of semis go in and out of there, and a lot of straight trucks. So people crossing there with the truck traffic, I can see it on the northeasterly side, but on the other side, I'd try to discourage that.
I agree with Mr. Gunlock, and it was something that I was going to bring up. I use this road a lot, and I do see a lot of trucks on there. There's also, the nicer the weather, the more traffic you see that parks there because of the bike path too. There's a lot of people that use that as a trailhead. They get on and off in that area. So I found, I'm on that street several times a week, and there's a lot of traffic there, a lot more than I ever anticipated that there would be. Mr. Lytle?
Yeah, just piggybacking off of that, what I see a lot on weekends are semis parked on the southwest side. And if our intent is to be more exact about how we manage parking, I think we'd want to specifically identify where you can park and where you can't park to make sure that transitions over from overnight semi parking to whatever we want it to be.
Mr. Horsfall?
And the other thing I was noticing is that the buildings on the, whatever direction it is, south side, the parking lots or the driveways don't line up with your development. Is that a problem, or is that, is there a way to shift to the west, so that those kind of line up.
Guess
Versus,
I'm not sure which,
if you show on the plan view, let's see that, the parking, the driveways don't line up with your driveways. They're offset by, 20 feet, 50 feet. Not that, I mean, I don't know if that's usually an engineering thing, you wanna keep them.
No, not so much. Not so much driveways, it's more if you've got cross streets.
All right, that's,
there's,
Go ahead.
there's currently 2 curb cuts on South Nine Mound, and we would try to utilize one of them to get into the surface parking. And the lower parking drive aisle would be, is really a function of the topography that's on the site, and that would allow us to get into the underground parking.
Ms. Ritter?
And previously, this piece of property has always been residential? Is that correct?
Mr. Sarah?
There's a house there right now, and I believe some outbuildings on the property. And I believe, yes, it's been used as residential, but it is zoned urban industrial.
Okay.
Mr. Horsfall?
just last comment, Jack's not here, so I'll be the, density police on this, but, we're pretty sensitive to exceeding the density even on a PUD situation. And like the mayor said, it's kind of a unique idea with how the apartments are. I don't know how you can modify that, but, try to keeping under the density. I don't know what the council will feel about it, but, there is probably some concern about going over the density a little bit, so.
Okay.
Other questions, comments? I guess one of the questions I have, you must have put some thought to this already with the potential of the apartments, and what type of clientele are you looking at? What are you anticipating that the average rental costs would be? And I saw that one of the individuals involved with this was planning on living there as well. But what are you looking at as far as rents, just a range? I know you can't give us exact
Sure.
dollars.
We've definitely been looking at rental rates in the area, and I think we'd like to work with that as a very strong starting point. We do see it as potentially a downsizing opportunity for perhaps some empty nesters, or absolutely a place for young professionals as well. So working with some of those more median incomes, we'd like to try to keep it in that affordable range, and I think we're looking in probably as a minimum, for those larger apartments, which are about 1,500 square feet, maybe 1,250, and as a maximum, something around 1,600 or 1,700.
Anything else that you can think of that would set you apart from any other project? Something really unique about this project?
Well, I think I think our development team, Mr. Bill Dresser, was a longtime Verona native, and he's more of the contractor arm of the development team. We're trying to pursue a smaller type project like this, and really take care of and all of the details, and not perhaps seek out larger development projects. So trying to work with the existing infrastructure and fit into the infill portion of the town.
Another question I have, and that is on timeline. And I know you have to get all sorts of approvals, and a lot of things need to be done before you could even begin any construction. What is your desirable timeline?
Realistically, well, optimally, if everything goes well and the soil conditions prove favorable and things like that, the earliest we could probably hope to get in the ground would be later this fall, but realistically, it might be in the spring.
Okay. Mr. Henson?
I guess one more question. What kind of, can you tell us about other development projects that you or others who are working on this development have done in the past?
Sure. Some of the projects I've worked on in the past, the Houston Old Town Commons in Cottage Grove, which has the 1855 saloon in it. Also at the trailhead to the Glacial Drumlin Trail. I was part of the project team of the Constellation 12-story high-rise that's going up in East Washington right now. Those are probably the two most notable.
Other questions or comments at this point? Mr. Lytle?
Just offering some overall feedback. I think there's a lot to like about this project. I think we're looking for ways to capitalize on having the Military Ridge Trail here in Verona, and I think there's a lot of room for improvement there. So I like to see projects like this. I think the overall mixed use that you're trying to achieve is very good as well. My one concern is I feel like while the architecture looks of very high standards and the overall intent is very good, it seems to be about 20% more building than I'd like to see on that lot. I understand you all have to make your economics work, but the combination of some concerns of the neighbors and the scale of this does give me a little bit of pause. So definitely we'll look forward to continuing that conversation and also how that would affect stormwater and the landscape ratios. So other than that,
Okay.
looking forward to it.
I will say in closing, I've been involved with quite a few number of LEED accredited products or credentialed products, and we will be pursuing that building standard for this project as well.
Further comments or questions? Mr. Lytle?
Thanks. One last thing for staff around the tenant they're envisioning would be a 3-meal per day, no late evening hours. Since there's not at least that I know of, a CUP required as part of this, what control does the city have down the line of making sure that the hours don't exceed what they're describing right now? If a new tenant would come into that building, is it regulated by the zoning? Could we regulate it by alcohol license, that sort of thing?
Mr. Sarah?
You could regulate it by, part of the best way would be putting conditions in the GDP. So in step 3, when you actually establish the overlay zoning for the property, you could put either hour restrictions into it or other features as well. I'd probably recommend capping in hours at how late they can be open. You know, they could start at 6 a.m., but they have to be closed by 9 or 10 p.m. That's probably the most efficient way of doing it.
And is that something you all are generally in agreement with?
Yeah, I think that sounds very reasonable.
Not seeing any other, anyone who wants to speak anymore on this issue, so we look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Right.
Thank you very much for being here this evening.
Thank you for your time.
Go ahead, Mr. Horsfall.
Will the council chat about this also?
Mr. Sarah?
Yes, next Monday.
Thanks again. We have no additional action on our agenda except for adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion by Ms. Ritter. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Horsfall. All in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.